When we do workshops, we often ask participants if they've ever submitted an article to an international refereed English language journal. And frequently the answer is yes. So then we ask what happened. And often enough the answer that comes back is it was rejected just a few days after the submission. Well, this is troubling. You've worked hard on your article, and then it obviously wasn't even read very carefully. So why does this happen? Well, in fact, there are huge numbers of articles that are published every year. Back about 20 years ago, Scopus, the citation index, listed about 1.1 million articles. In 2018, the number had risen to 3.5 million. So there are a huge number of articles that make it into print every year. However, as large as that figure is, there's another figure behind it, and that's the number of manuscripts that editors reject every year. And that is, in the case of some of the top journals, more than 90% of the submissions. Just to give you an example, in 2018, the American Political Science Review received more than 1,200 papers. They rejected 60% immediately. They sent about 490 out for referees reports, and of those 492, 73 authors received letters inviting them to revise and resubmit. That is just 6% of the number of submissions, and some of those articles ultimately were rejected. So what happens when an article comes in? The first thing that will happen is that the editors or the editorial team will look at the article and decide whether they want to proceed with it. If the answer is no, then they will reject it straight away, and this is called a desk rejection. This is a rejection where the article is not sent out for referees' reports. So why don't journals send all submissions out for peer review? Well, there's several reasons. One of them is that people send articles to the wrong journal, to a journal that doesn't actually publish on the topic that they've written on. Second is that journals receive many more submissions than they can possibly accept because there's a limited amount of space. And the third thing is that a journal editor doesn't want to burden referees with pieces that have no chance of success. Sometimes an editor looks at an article and decides this is really not a very good piece. So what does that mean? Well, in the social sciences and humanities, that decision will be based more on presentation than it will on content. Eventually, if you make it past the initial screening, referees will be invited to look at your content. But in the first instance, the editor is going to judge this on the likelihood of a referee saying, yes, this is a good piece. And that will hinge on how the material has been presented. Sometimes you look at an article and you find a lot of data, but no sense of direction. Sometimes you look at an article and it seems like the topic is really not very important. Sometimes the material seems to be out of date. This is done by just checking the bibliography, and you can see the citations are old. Sometimes the writing is poor. Sometimes the structure doesn't look very good. So articles can be rejected in the first instance for any of those reasons. And anybody who gets rejected immediately feels like the editor has made a mistake. Do editors make mistakes? Of course they do. But given the number of submissions, if an editor loses a good article, there are plenty of other articles to take its place. And generally speaking, a good article will get published somewhere. So if your article is rejected, even if it's immediate desk rejection, look at what the journal might be looking for, look at your article, and consider sending it somewhere else. If the article's been refereed, look at the referee's comments, revise the article on that basis, and then send it somewhere else. Good luck.